Hey, seventh graders, today we're going to be looking at Chapter 7, Section 3, Ideas Behind the Constitution. And what we're going to focus on today is where did the framers, where did the founding fathers get their inspiration when they were drafting the Constitution in 1787 in Philadelphia? So 7.3, Ideas Behind the Constitution. There's one vocab word on the sheet here, but there are seven all told in the section, and the entire deck can be found on your Quizlet page, and it also can be found on your Google Classroom page as we study ideas behind the Constitution. The one word that appears today is a dictatorship, a government in which one person or a small group of people holds complete authority. Dictatorship. Let's get right into where ideas behind the Constitution have come from. The ideas in the United States Constitution come from many sources, and we're going to examine these today. And I've got the reading organized into really four sections. The ideas in the United States come from many sources. First, the founders were inspired by the example of the Roman Republic, the civilization of ancient Rome, a system in which Roman citizens governed themselves by electing representatives. The founding fathers were impressed by the willingness of the Roman citizens to serve in public office out of devotion to self-government. They felt it was their responsibility to serve their community. At the same time, the founders saw the collapse of Rome's republic and its shift to dictatorship as a warning to the United States. So the first place that the founding fathers are going to find inspiration is in the example of the Roman Republic, the ancient Roman Republic. Next up, the English tradition was centuries old. The founding fathers and ideas behind the Constitution are going to come from the English tradition, which so many of the founding fathers were familiar with because their ancestors and many of the founding fathers had come directly from England to the colonies, as well as some people who had lived in North America when it was still the English colonies. They had still relied on their tradition of experience with England. At the heart of the English system of government was the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights, documents in which rulers recognize certain rights of citizens. These rights included the right not to be jailed without being charged and the right not to be taxed unfairly. Both of these ideas, the right to not be jailed without first being charged with a crime, and then the right to be not to be taxed unfairly, both of these come from the English tradition. The next place that founding fathers found inspiration when writing the Constitution was beginning in the 1600s. Americans enjoyed a tradition of representative government in the colonies. And in Virginia, colonists had established, as we learned before in Chapter 3, the House of Burgesses. Virginia established the House of Burgesses. In Massachusetts, the Pilgrims set the limits of powers of government in the Mayflower Compact. So in both of these examples, the House of Burgesses and the Mayflower Compact, the colonists, the founding fathers, were relying on the colonial experience that began in 1607 with the establishment of the Jamestown colony. And they banked on that, or they relied on that rather, in writing the Constitution in 1787. They were looking at that period of time between 1607 and 1787, and they were using that 180-year period and that experience as an inspiration as well when writing and drafting the Constitution. And finally, Enlightenment thinkers were another source of inspiration to the writers of the Constitution. John Locke wrote that people have natural rights, and we've talked about these natural rights when we talked about the Declaration and the Constitution so far. John Locke talked about natural rights, which were the rights to life, liberty, and the right to own property. and that rulers also, John Locke said, rulers must protect those rights. Baron de Montesquieu urged that the power of government be clearly defined and divided among three branches of government. So again, here we are looking at Montesquieu. Montesquieu came up with this idea of separation of powers and the three branches of government, which today exists as a vital part of our government. Three branches of government: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, which are designed to make sure that no one branch of government has too much power, and that the roles of government are shared equally among those three branches. Now, these are the four areas in which the founding fathers found inspiration. They found inspiration, again, from Enlightenment thinkers. They found information from the colonial experience. They found information over here on the left-hand side from the English tradition. And then the first source that we talked about was the source of inspiration comes from the ancient Roman Republic. So all four of these areas are places that the writers of the Constitution found inspiration. Above all, the founders considered their own experiences as colonists fighting for their independence. They remembered the struggle to put together a national government, and they also remembered the failures of the Articles of Confederation. And those failures of the Articles are what really set into motion the need for the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787 in the first place. That failures of the Articles, the fact that there was no national leader, the fact that there were no real way to compel states to pay taxes, the fact that under the Articles there was no national currency, all those things, in addition to the other things that we've talked about in this section, are going to be ways in which the founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution found inspiration. This document was not really written from scratch, as we've talked about. There were things from the writer's experience that they knew about. They knew about from the recent past, and they knew about from the ancient past. And all of these ideas were utilized and were relied on when they wrote the Constitution. And if you look carefully here at the chart at the bottom of the page titled Sources of Ideas Behind the Constitution, this little organizer here pretty much breaks up into four sections. The reading really that we just completed. The first source of inspiration, the first source of ideas behind the Constitution was the ideas of the Roman Republic and representational government. The second source was the English tradition that so many of the founding fathers were familiar with, the written Declaration of Citizens' Rights, the Magna Carta. The third source of ideas behind the Constitution was the Enlightenment thinkers, Montesquieu and John Locke, the recognition that people have natural rights, and the division of government powers into three separate branches. And finally, the other source of inspiration will be the American experience, the experience that the colonists had in claiming their independence and the struggle to create a strong national government with the Articles of Confederation and their failure resulting in the Constitutional Convention in 1787. So looking at the questions at the bottom of the page, you've got question 1, which asks, what ideas of the Enlightenment helped the founders? What ideas of the Enlightenment helped the founders? To answer that question, you'll need to look at paragraph that I've labeled 3 on your reading above, and you'll be able to answer that question pretty plainly looking at paragraph 3. And the question on the chart is identify the 4 sources of ideas for the Constitution. Identify the 4 sources of ideas for the Constitution. In our next section, we are going to look at Chapter 7, Section 4. And Chapter 7, Section 4 is going to be titled Ratification and the Bill of Rights. We're going to see how the Constitution was ratified and approved by the 13 states, and we're also going to see the implementation of a Bill of Rights as well. Until then, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.